Welcome back. This is the final match of the second league. Inspiring Vantage into Legion's Landing, so this looks like we are playing against Boros Convoke. We don't have the best starting hand, but we have Sleep Cursed Fairy in turn 1. And we are a little bit flooded. But this is still no problem, we have the Picklock Prankster. We just can't free the Fae yet because of Thalia. So it's either untapping the Sleep Cursed Fairy or playing the Dream Thief. And right now I think it's more important to filter our draw, so let's play the Dream Thief. And it was the right decision. Let's get rid of that land. And it seems I'm lucky here, because my opponent didn't convoke into one of his 5 mana creatures. I am going to block the token here, because I don't like that he has lifelink. And also I want to keep his creature count low, so that at least he has a little bit of a harder time convoking into stuff. Also, if my opponent convokes into a Venerated Loxodon, that means all the creatures that convoked him get +1/+1, and I don't like the thought of a 2/2 lifelink. Now, this is one of the really rare occurrences where I cast the Picklock Prankster without freeing the Fae first. I do this because the Picklock Prankster is a great answer to Thalia. Let me know what you think about that. I feel like it's important to notice that in the last turn I did not have the mana for a counterspell open. So I do think my opponent top-decked that Night Errant of Eos. It's just another reason why it could have been right to play the Picklock Prankster here. Okay, another land. Let's make the best out of the situation and play a land that doesn't come tapped, so we can untap the Sleep Cursed Fairies. Now this is going to hurt. Imoden's Recruiter is giving all his creatures +1/+0. I can still untap one of the Sleep Cursed Fairies and activate the Muta Vault. So I have 3 blockers. I try to divide my blockers so that I can kill as much as possible. Thalia is now a 3-1 with First Strike, so I don't want to block her with the Picklock Prankster. Now Fairy Fencing would be the best card to draw here. Flooding in mana is something that can happen. This is just part of Magic. So I can untap the Sleep Cursed Fairy twice. That means I have 3 creatures to block. So if I calculated that right, I'm going to live with 1 life. A little thing changed here, because I do have to trade one of my fairies against the Knight Errant of Eos. I don't want to block the Thalia with the Picklock Prankster, so I'm going to throw him into the Knight Errant of Eos. Aigandio can only kill my Sleep Cursed Fairy once she has already blocked. Because now I have to trade a fairy against the Knight Errant of Eos every turn, I do think I can concede here. Now I do have at least quite the strong sideboard plan against this deck. That means in go 2 Glistening Deluge, 2 Ritual of Soot and 2 Noxious Grasp, and out go 2 Brazen Borrower, 2 Fatal Push and 2 Thoughtseize. Because Fatal Push is not going to hit the Convoke creatures. And I board out the Thoughtseize because my opponent can get rid of his hand cards really fast. And the Brazen Borrower is just a little bit slow. Also, I don't want to bounce his Convoke creatures. And of course I don't want to board out the Picklock Prankster, because the Free the Fae can help to find a Glistening Deluge. Now this hand is really strong. We have the pressure in form of the Sleep Cursed Fairy, and also we have the answer to our opponent flooding the board in the form of Glistening Deluge. Now also if we can hit the land drops, we have a really nice mana curve. I haven't seen him before. He can get flying, but I don't think this is going to become a problem. Now we really need to hit that land drop. If we don't get that land drop, that means the opponent is able to convoke in his next turn. And that would be quite the hassle to first get rid of all the creatures and then pity theft the convoke creature away. It's still a plan, but I hope I don't have to rely on it. Free the Fae will find either Ego Drain or Noxious Grasp. If I take the Noxious Grasp, that means my opponent would be able to already convoke his creature. That means I will take the Ego Drain, so even if I don't get the land drop, I can still get rid of the convoke creature from his hand, hopefully. But I'm really lucky, I've got the land drop. So let's get that Glistening Deluge out. My opponent does not have a board state now, so the Ego Drain will hit him even harder. Now I have the decision between the Venerated Loxodon and the Declaration in Stone. Right now my opponent isn't able to cast the Venerated Loxodon, so naturally I would feel like the Declaration in Stone would be the call here. But I take the Venerated Loxodon. Let's just hope it doesn't make a difference, because we still have the Spell Stutter in hand. Now, if my opponent decides to kill the Sleep Cursed Fairy, that's fine, we can counter that. And if they decide to keep the Declaration in Stone for later on, that's also fine for me, because that means the Sleep Cursed Fairy is going to live. So my opponent indeed pays 4 mana to get rid of the Sleep Cursed Fairy, and I still can counter that. So this time I want to do the sequencing right. So I let my opponent pay the ward cost, and after that I'm going to counter. Now this is the perfect situation. I draw the land for Rankle, I can play Rankle, my opponent has only 1 card left in hand. I can get rid of his last hand card. I couldn't paint a better picture. I don't think I need the Glistening Deluge again, so let's get rid of that one. And just when I said I don't need the Glistening Deluge again, my opponent fills the board with goblins. The Picklock Prankster is going to protect us from the goblins. And the opponent concedes. this hand is also great again. Not as great as the hand we had before, but still Sleep Cursed Fairy into keep up spell stutter. And even if things go wrong, we still have the Noxious Grasp. My opponent is casting 3 creatures in turn 1. This deck is really funny. That doesn't change the plan. We start with Sleep Cursed Fairy. And we are lucky again. Because this could have been a venerated Loxodon in turn 2. It does not look like we need the counterspell this turn. And it also doesn't look like we need the Noxious Grasp with all those counterspells. So I think I can just throw it at the Varden. Now I can play the Fairy Dream Thief while still keeping up the spell stutter mana. And thank you, we don't need any more lands. Now this is a tricky situation. On the one hand, I shouldn't counter the Warden of the Inner Sky, because my opponent has, if we count the creatures as mana, my opponent has 5 mana. On the other hand, he does not have white mana, so he couldn't play the Venerated Loxodon or the Night Errant of Eos. But then, my opponent hadn't had a land drop this turn yet, so he could still play a white mana and then Convoke into his creature. But then again, my opponent missed his land drop in the last turn, and also he didn't Convoke in the last turn. And I do think if he had the possibility, he would have done one of the two things. So I think he does neither have a Convoke creature, nor does he have the land. So my opponent found the Night Errant of Eos. Now we can counter that. And now we are in quite the secure spot. We could always untap our Sleep Cursed Fairy to block, and we also have the spell stutter to counter any Convoke creatures. Okay, Ilmodane's Recruiter is another reasonable target for the spell stutter. Now that my opponent does not have any cards left in his hand, I feel like I can afford to attack with the Hive of the Eye Tyrant. This is a great top deck for my opponent, but this is still not going to win him the race. The opponent completely taps out. That means if I'm able to draw a land in the next turn, I'm able to activate the Hive and the Muta Vault. And I really do find the land. That's great. That means I'm able to end the game right here. And that's game. So thank you for watching. Have a great day and see you next time.